Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about trend lines a little bit more in detail. In the previous video we defined trend lines as the source of compression on our chart, also the source of fuel for the move, okay? So if we have a trend line that is, ooh, that's a horrible trend line. If we have a trend line that is like this on the downtrend and then we have an uptrend, so the entire price action is happening between these lines, right? And the moment it breaks above it, it acts the same trend lines that were compressing it before, it will act as a fuel to pump it upwards. However, on the other side, if the move decides to go below this uptrend, it is going to act as a fuel downwards. It's going to have a big dump. Okay. Now, the size of the move all depends on the type of trend it is breaking out of, whether it be upwards or downwards, okay? So I'm going to define these trend lines as legacy, global, local. I've categorized them that way. You guys can name them whatever you want. The names are not important. The concepts are more important, okay? So first we're going to draw our legacy, which is from the highest peak on the highest time frame, okay? So each time frame, by the way, will have its own legacy, global, local, okay? Since we're a monthly time frame, so we will draw our legacy trend line. I will paint this in green, same color as my text over here. One hard close at a time. We want to take our time. Remember from the previous video, take your time, even a small part of the body, if it's piercing through the trend line, um, that's not a valid hard close, okay? Go to the next one. So that's where it's coming out to be. Now, as you can see that, there are candles sticking out of this trend line and quite a bit. If we see in terms of percentage, this is a big percent. This is what, like 14%. And the reason for that is we have another trend line over here on its own, which we will refer to as global, which will cover these outer compressions, okay? Basically, what we want to do is with these trend lines, we want to have all of these candles touching them from the inside and from the outside, okay? So in this case, we do not have a local trend line because this is the last hard close that I could find, okay? This candle has not finished printing. We need a hard close, but we want a an accumulation candle hard close. We already have these two distribution candle hard closes, but those are not what we want. In case of a downtrend, if you remember from the previous video, all we want to consider are the accumulation candles, okay? So this has not stopped printing. We don't know if this candle will actually end up, it only started 3 days ago. So it's a monthly candle. It could actually have a big dump and it will end up as a distribution candle. If a candle has not finished printing, we do not consider that while drawing our trend line, okay? We will have to go to our smaller time frame and dig for the local trend, okay? Now, the base was fine over there in these trend lines, okay? We never touched the base, but when you come to a smaller time frame, you might notice that that same base is like connected to nothing. It's like in the air, right? That's normal. That happens, okay? Leave it the way it is. By the way, let's paint this global in yellow color, same as our text over here. Now I'm looking for my local, okay? Um, for local, I will start with the highest peak, which is over here, okay? One hard close at a time. So when you do one hard close at a time, I believe it will turn out to be over here at this point, okay? Again, make sure you guys do your work. Go one hard close at a time. Make sure it's not connected to a distribution candle or some other candle right next to it, okay? You want it to be connected to the proper hard close, okay? So that is our trend line. Now, there's another trend line that I could start from here and cover the compression in the current move. However, The biggest problem is, first, I don't have a distribution candle towards the end, which means that I don't know if this current move is going to keep moving upwards. I have to have a stopping point somewhere for it to be considered a valid trend. So I cannot just, start my trend line and connect it to the last hard close. No. Either way, I cannot connect it to this hard close because this is not a hard close yet. It has not finished printing. It's a weekly candle and we still have 2 days left in it. Today is Friday, so we have until Sunday night for it to be finished printing. Okay. Second point is we have to have a distribution candle towards the end, which will have to end up being a distribution candle for us to even consider drawing this trend line. Okay. So let's say if we have this candle, the current one that is printing, until Sunday night, it finishes as an accumulation candle. Then I will have to wait another week and I have to have a distribution candle, which is this imaginary candle that I drew for you guys over here. Okay, horrible looking candle, but imagine that in 2 weeks time from now, we have another distribution candle. In that case, that'll be a very valid trend line, in which case I will go from here to here. Excuse me, that same trend line that I drew, even though in this case it's not a valid trend line yet, okay? I will connect it over there with the magnet tool on, okay? So that'll be a valid trend line, but in this case it's not. So in this case, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to break it down even on a smaller time frame. So let's go to daily, okay? On daily, we will have several trend lines. So from the peak, because we want to cover all of these peaks sticking out, okay? So peak of an accumulation candle, the highest one that I could find, to this the next one, which is right here. Then what is another peak sticking out? Right here. This one, right? So I start another trend line, go one hard close at a time, okay? That's my trend line. Then from here, I'm going to start another trend line to cover all of this move over here. Because remember, we are trying to cover compressions either towards the outside in case of monthly. You remember how on monthly time frame, these wicks were sticking out. So we covered the outer compression. And in terms of daily, we're trying to cover the outer. Now we're trying to cover the inner compressions as well. Okay. So starting from the reach point of our previous trend, okay, we go one hard close at a time. So we'll have a valid trend line that will connect over here. And after this, I cannot draw another trend line that will connect to this. Could be another. Actually, in this case, there will be a trend line. Actually, a valid trend line. My apologies, guys, because we have a lot of distribution candles after this. So yeah. So right here, okay, then here, here. This is my trend line, okay, and it actually broke above this trend line, which is the reason why it went up so much, okay. Now, why can't I go from this to the next hard close and then to the next hard close? Now, think for a second what I told you guys previously. I have to have a stopping point. In this case, this current candle is my only hope for me to draw this trend line if it ends up being a distribution candle. In this case, even though it looks like a distribution candle, it's a red candle, but it has not finished printing. It still has almost 5 hours to go. If this ends up as being a distribution candle, I can take the same trend line and I can massage it to the next hard close one by one at a time. It will come over here. That will be my valid trend line. And then I'll further go to a 12 hour or 4 hour and I'll draw from the base, the reach of that trend line, I will draw another trend line. That will come something like, like this. I'll be covering that compression towards the inside on a smaller time frame. But in this case, I cannot massage my trend line any further than this point because I don't have a finished distribution candle yet, okay? Now the same concept applies for, so this is it. This is the furthest I can go in terms of time frames for my trend lines. Okay. Now the same concept we're going to apply for uptrends. Okay. So even though this video will be a bit longer, but let's quickly draw this trend line because it's the exact same opposite. You guys should have no confusion by now, okay? In case of a downtrend, we start from the top peak of accumulation candle. In case of an uptrend, we start from the bottom peak of, remember the mirror image of distribution candle, okay? From here, so this is not a hard close. A part of the top of the body is touching the trend line. So we go to the next hard close here, and then the next hard close will be here. And then I want to cover this internal compression as well, okay? So from here to here. So it has to be at the peak, okay? Make sure you guys don't have it connected in the middle of the body or something. No, the trend line always has to be connected at the peak, okay? In case of an uptrend, the bottom peak, okay? So let's color this. This will be our legacy trend on a monthly time frame in green, okay? This big one. This small one over here, this is our global, which is yellow color, okay? Then we will go and break it down further on a smaller time frame on a weekly to see if we have some other trend lines. Now this is normal the way these trend lines are looking because it's a really big time frame we're on. So these trend lines are actually daily trend lines, okay? That's why they look them, they seem that way, okay? So in case of a weekly trend line, uh, in case of local trend line, we did not have anything on monthly trend line, just like we didn't have one on the downtrends, okay? That's why we're going to actually, and I think my internet stopped working. No, there it's back. So we couldn't find anything on monthly time frame for a local. You know how we covered this entire move. We did not have any further compressions we could cover on this time frame. That's why we have to break it down and go to a weekly time frame. Okay? So on a weekly time frame, what are the wicks that are sticking out? Remember, we're trying to cover compressions. Okay? So you see, this is a wick over here, a small wick sticking out. So I will consider that as my base point. Okay? And go one hard close at a time. So let's color that in a different color so we don't confuse it with our global trend line. So let's color it in white. So this is the white one is the one that we're looking at. So this is our trend line. That's our valid trend line. Okay. Now, as you guys can see, the moment it actually lost this trend line, this is why it had that big dump. Okay. And now we have another trend line that is actually over here sticking out from this point to this point, and then we go to the next hard close, which is right here. Okay, we're trying to cover all of the compressions, and then we come over here, and in this case we have a hard close below this trend line. So this is where our next trend line comes out to be. So this covered these, the green one actually covered my internal compression, the green one and this white one and this yellow one, and this outer white one, it covered my outer compression. So as you can see, our entire move is going to be moving around within these trend lines, okay? No matter what time frame you go to, you will see we have nicely covered all of the compressions, whether they're on the inside or on the outer side, okay? This is our daily time frame. You can see all of the move is covered within these trend lines.